In May 1945, the guns fall silent, and in an instant, the once mighty Luftwaffe ceases to exist. All across the continent, a vast fleet of German warplanes is left derelict. A treasure trove ranging from legendary piston-engine fighters to revolutionary jets and experimental airframes still under development. The victorious Allies suddenly find themselves in control of aviation technology a generation ahead of its time, sparking a clandestine competition to secure, analyze, or eliminate every discovery. In the first week of May 1945, as the Third Reich capitulated, the German Air Force had effectively vaporized as a fighting force. Aircraft sat deserted on airfields stretching from the Scandinavian fjords to the Alps, some in pristine condition, others cannibalized for spare parts or crippled by bombardment. A critical lack of fuel, fractured chains of command, and obliterated support infrastructure had already grounded numerous squadrons for weeks. When the surrender became official on May 8th, thousands of aircraft remained exactly where they'd been parked, silent monuments to an air arm that had recently ruled the European skies. Throughout northern Germany, strategic locations like Flensburg and Lübeck became impromptu graveyards for numerous grounded warplanes, a mix of operational machines, damaged hulks, and incomplete projects. In Prague, hangars were crammed with Messerschmitts, Heinkels, and late-war experimental types. At Rechlin, the Luftwaffe's primary evaluation center, Allied searchers uncovered experimental airframes, wind tunnel models, and troves of technical data that laid bare the full extent of Germany's jet and rocket-powered research. The sheer diversity of surviving aircraft astonished many Allied officers. Nestled among familiar workhorses like the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Focke-Wulf FW-190 were groundbreaking innovations, such as the Arado AR-234 jet-powered bomber, the Heinkel He-162 Volksjager, and the remnants of ambitious projects like the forward-swept-wing Junkers Ju-287. Transport and reconnaissance planes, including the Junkers Ju-52 and Heinkel He-111, were also strewn across airfields. Many units had simply exhausted their fuel reserves in the conflict's final days, leaving their machines parked and untouched. By the time hostilities ceased, the Luftwaffe's command and control apparatus had disintegrated. Commanders offered their surrender to whichever Allied unit they first encountered, and ground crews frequently deserted their stations without formal orders. Maintenance logs, fuel stores, and spare parts depots were often incomplete or had been deliberately destroyed. The Allied Control Commission swiftly instituted stringent regulations. All German aircraft were grounded, and no German pilot was permitted to fly without explicit Allied permission. These directives were designed to thwart rogue flights, escape attempts, or the transport of high-ranking officials. A debate quickly arose within the Allied High Command about what should be salvaged and what should be obliterated. Some officers viewed the intact German aircraft as a potential threat, while others recognized their immense value for research. What became certain, from the very first days following surrender, was that the destiny of the Luftwaffe's planes was now a complex matter of intelligence gathering, logistical planning, and political maneuvering. In the immediate aftermath of Germany's surrender, the victorious Allies launched ambitious initiatives to recover the Reich's most prized aviation technology. The Americans were quickest off the mark. Just one day after the official ceasefire on May 9, 1945, U.S. intelligence teams spearheaded Operation Lusty, an acronym for Luftwaffe's secret technology. Under the command of Colonel Harold Watson, these teams fanned out across Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. Their objective was unequivocal: locate advanced aircraft, confiscate technical documents, and transport selected examples back to the United States for exhaustive evaluation. At Lechfeld in Germany, American forces secured several intact Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighters. At Grove Airfield in Denmark, they discovered Arado jet bombers and an assortment of late-war prototypes. Aircraft deemed valuable were either flown out or dismantled for shipment to the Wright Field Testing Center in Ohio. Others were sent to Freeman Field in Indiana, where specialized units meticulously cataloged equipment, engines, and design innovations. Pilots from the renowned Watson's Wizards flight group conducted test flights in these captured jets under tightly controlled conditions. Their findings profoundly influenced early American comprehension of swept-wing aerodynamics, jet propulsion, and high-speed flight. The British mounted a concurrent endeavor known as Operation Surgeon. In contrast to the American focus on securing physical aircraft, the British placed equal importance on the engineers, scientists, and technicians who had designed and built them. Teams from the Royal Aircraft Establishment descended upon airfields at Fassburg, Schleswig, Husum, and Rechlin, interrogating surviving personnel and amassing documentation. Chosen experts were transferred to British facilities for post-war employment. At RAF Farnborough, test pilots flew captured aircraft, including the Me-262, to gain first-hand knowledge of its capabilities and limitations. The British were particularly fascinated by the He-162, whose lightweight construction offered valuable insights for future trainer and interceptor designs. The Soviet Union also acted with remarkable speed. Their so-called trophy brigades seized factories and airfields throughout Saxony, Thuringia, Silesia, and Czechoslovakia. Major production hubs like the Avio Works in Prague and the Bf-109 assembly lines in Moravia fell under Soviet control. Aircraft were transported eastward by rail, alongside tooling machinery and skilled engineers. At air bases near Moscow and Leningrad, Soviet pilots and designers meticulously studied the Me-262 and AR-234, incorporating their discoveries into nascent jet projects. Rivalry soon flared among the Allies. Each power coveted the rarest aircraft, especially the one-of-a-kind prototypes. Disputes erupted over which side had the rightful claim to specific machines, particularly at locations in central Germany where American and Soviet forces arrived within days of each other. The Allied Control Council attempted to coordinate the collection efforts, but the underlying tensions, foreshadowing the Cold War's divisions, were already palpable. German personnel proved instrumental in these programs. Former pilots, mechanics, and engineers provided detailed technical briefings, sometimes under guard and other times as part of temporary employment contracts. Their expertise was crucial in helping Allied teams understand and operate complex systems like the Jumo 004 and BMW 003 jet engines, as well as sophisticated navigation gear. The Allies documented everything: photographs, blueprints, flight manuals, and test data before making the final determination on which aircraft to preserve and which to demolish. By the close of 1946, the major collection drives were concluded. Dozens of Luftwaffe aircraft had been transported to the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union for analysis. These initiatives directly influenced early jet aircraft development and paved the way for the next phase: the systematic destruction of everything that remained. By late 1945, the Allied Control Council decreed that Germany would be permitted to possess no military aircraft. The most significant examples had already been dispatched overseas. The thousands that were left were slated for annihilation, transforming airfields across Europe into immense scrapyards between 1945 and 1948. The directive was straightforward. Every German warplane, fighters, bombers, transports, trainers, and experimental models was to be eliminated unless specifically earmarked for research. Bases such as Flensburg, Lübeck, Blankensee, Grove, and Tarnwitz became disposal centers where Allied crews methodically stripped and crushed airframes, feeding the metal back into Europe's recovering industries. At Grove, rows of fighters were taken apart. In northern Germany, British teams demolished intact bombers that had weathered the war. Even late-war jet aircraft were broken down unless they had already been allocated to test programs. Some planes were incinerated in large pits or loaded onto barges and scuttled along the coastline. Many of these underwater wrecks still rest on the seabed, occasionally rediscovered by divers. Civilian aviation also faced strict limitations. Aircraft with dual-use potential, such as the Junkers Ju-52, were evaluated individually. A few were converted for limited transport services, but many were still scrapped to maintain consistency with Allied policy. In Czechoslovakia, captured aircraft briefly entered service under new designations before the majority were retired and dismantled. France, which operated several German types for training and evaluation, eventually phased them out as spare parts dwindled and maintenance became too challenging. Historians continue to debate whether more aircraft could have been saved. Some researchers argue that numerous historically unique airframes were lost during this era simply because no museums or archives had capacity to house them. Others counter that Allied priorities were centered on demilitarization not preservation, and that the political imperative to dismantle Germany's war machine superseded any concerns about historical significance. The scarce number of surviving Luftwaffe aircraft today is a direct consequence of this wholesale disposal phase. Economic realities also influence the destruction process. Widespread metal shortages across Europe meant that the aluminum and steel from Luftwaffe aircraft were precious commodities. Recycling the airframes helped supply industries producing consumer goods, infrastructure materials, and machinery vital for recovery. For many local laborers, scrapping aircraft provided steady employment during a difficult transitional period. By 1948, the overwhelming majority of Luftwaffe aircraft had vanished. The runways that once thundered with the takeoffs of major fighter and bomber units were cleared or repurposed. Some became training grounds for Allied occupation forces. Others reverted to agricultural use or were developed into civilian airports. Even as most Luftwaffe aircraft were being dismantled after 1945, a smaller number found a new lease on life under foreign flags. From 1946 onwards, several nations operated German-designed aircraft out of necessity, availability, or technical curiosity. These fleets were often short-lived, but they played a significant role in early post-war aviation. Czechoslovakia became one of the first countries to repurpose German equipment. Factories in Prague, Kinovice, and Letniny held both completed aircraft and partially assembled airframes, which engineers reconfigured into operational fighters. The most famous outcome was the Avia S-199. Notoriously challenging to fly, the S-199 nonetheless equipped the Czechoslovak Air Force until it was replaced by newer Soviet designs. Several were later sold to Israel, becoming that nation's first fighter aircraft in 1948. Spain also continued the lineage of German fighters. Under licensing agreements dating back to the late 1930s, Spanish factories produced the Hispano Aviation HA-1112, a modified Messerschmitt Bf-109 variant powered by Spanish-built engines. These aircraft served in the Spanish Air Force well into the mid-1950s. Their most famous appearance came decades later, when they were used to depict German fighters in films such as The Battle of Britain. Norway-operated captured Bf-109s and AR-96 trainers during its initial post-war reconstruction. A scarcity of spare parts eventually grounded these planes, but several airframes survived long enough to be restored in the 1960s and 1970s. Civil aviation also benefited indirectly from surviving German technology. The Junkers Ju-52 found a second career in passenger service with several carriers. In France, the Toucan variant was manufactured at the Amiot factories and used for colonial transport duties. The newly reformed Lufthansa briefly operated Ju-52s in the early 1950s before transitioning to modern aircraft. By the time West Germany established the Bundesluftwaffe in 1956, none of the old Luftwaffe aircraft were considered for active service. The new Air Force relied on Allied-built designs like the F-84 Thunderstreak, Canadair Sabre, and later the F-104 Starfighter. German aviation had firmly entered the jet age, leaving its wartime designs behind. Efforts to preserve the remaining airframes gained momentum in the latter half of the 20th century. Many of today's museum pieces originate from crash sites, remote lakes, or wrecks long buried on the Eastern Front. Restorers often had to combine parts from multiple aircraft to create a single, complete example. In the modern era, only a handful of intact Luftwaffe aircraft still exist. Examples of Me-262, Bf-109, FW-190, and Arado AR-234 are displayed in museums from Washington, D.C. to Berlin, while a few privately built replicas can be seen flying at air shows. Almost all original wartime airframes are now permanently grounded. What remains today is but a mere shadow of the sprawling aerial empire that once dominated European skies. They are mute testaments to the ephemeral nature of even the most formidable technology and how the post-war era forged a new destiny for Germany's aeronautical legacy. If this exploration of aviation history captivated you, we invite you to discover our next feature, The Fate of Germany's U-Boat Fleet After World War II. It's a deep dive into how the Kriegsmarine's underwater wolves were captured, dissected, and scattered across the globe in the war's turbulent wake. Like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell for more history inside. Thanks for watching.